Okay.
Getting off the tees.
Good morning, and we'll get started with the May 10th meeting of the Main Street Board of Directors. And welcome everybody to our meeting. Meredith, you have roll call finished? All right, we're all set with the roll call. In front of you, you have an agenda. There's a number of items on it. If you'd like to add anything at this time, this would be the time to do it. If not, I'll entertain a motion to accept the agenda as presented. There's a motion. Is there support? And there's support. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, the same. We have an agenda. In your packets, you had the minutes from the April 12th, 2023 meeting of the Main Street Board of Directors. Is there any additions, corrections, deletions that need to be had? If none, I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes into the record. There's motion. Is there support?
Support.
Motion and support. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, the same. Records, the minutes of our April 12th meeting are in the record. Thank you. So right away, we're going to go right to Ben Muldrow. I know he's on our screen right here, and he's going to give us sort of a summary of some of the information he received from us through surveys and the like, and sort of give us where we stand today. So Ben, the floor is yours.
Fantastic. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for letting me hop in from warm and balmy Mississippi. Just wanted to give you all a quick summary of the survey results and then the revisions and edits that we had made to the recommended brand system. First of all, super excited. The overall survey results were overwhelmingly positive. We essentially had 70% positive or higher on every single question, but there were some really thoughtful comments, some really thoughtful kind of ways to think about the system. And I'd like to just very quickly go through the feedback from you all and then the way that we responded with modifications to the system. So I'll just throw this up on the screen real quick and we'll go through it. So first of all, we asked the question about the color palette. Did the color palette make sense? Overwhelmingly, we've got essentially 90% saying yes and 10% even neutral on it. But I will say, after reading some of the written in comments, there were a couple of comments that were just, they were really spot on. That the color palette as a whole is completely and totally cool. And it was in a very small spectrum. And there was some desire to expand that color palette out slightly and include a little bit of warm tones so that it would allow us to be a little bit more vibrant, a little bit more dynamic. So what we did was we used our institution of higher education as kind of base colors. And we did add 2 colors into the system. And it still allows us to keep a relatively tight palette, but it adds some really nice warmth and will add for some nice diversity into the overall composition. Then the next question that we asked was about the icon. Again, 80% positive and then 2% on the fence. So really not getting too much into the negative on that. And we did the same thing. We really liked that direction, but we wanted to create a little bit more depth, a little bit more activity. So we recolored the color way slightly and we're able to get a little bit more life and a little bit more action into it, which I think works well for us. Then from there, this is where we started to get a little bit of pushback. I mean, still, we've got to frame this. This is overwhelmingly positive, but we asked about the typefaces. And there was a little bit of concern. And to be honest, after going back and looking at it and reading what you all had kind of shared in the open-ended questions, I think one of the things that wasn't really working as well as I wanted it to was the pairing of the 2 different sans serifs. So what we did was we modified that that secondary typeface into what we call a slab serif. And I think it works really, really nicely with the overall system. It doesn't compete with the two as much and gives us a nice traditional base. So, you know, what we start to see with that word type and kind of the adaptation in the brand system, it was interesting, even with all of the comments about the individual components, when we asked you all about the system as a whole, 100% answered positively. And I think that's really, really telling at the fact that the foundation itself is really strong. And I think that's what's important about these systems is they're constantly growing, they're constantly adapting. It's not a tattoo. We're not going to have to live with it for the rest of our lives, but we're going through and we're getting that really good, solid foundation. So what we've done is just to kind of show you how that adaptation has kind of moved forward. We're going to supply you with all these different variations as part of your system, so you can really try on the different outfits and feel like what works best for you. But I do think that this extra pop of color in the composition does add a lot of life to it. There were some comments about the Main Street and DDA. This was probably the single most divided. And even with this, it's still 70-30. But I think that there was some really interesting comments about this. So I did want to throw a whole nother variation your way for your toolkit, where we simply lean into that icon as itself and giving ourselves a stylized A to kind of talk about that Main Street component, have the DDA and DARA variations, and really just allow all of the positive brand equity and all of kind of the organizational momentum that's being created around your downtown to kind of tie in to this vibrant and multicolored icon. So with that, the only other addition that we really made was I actually left the first Fridays out of the first presentation because I was probably just moving too fast, but we did want to again include that brand identity and include some of those components into the overall toolkit. So this is our response to you all's comments, and again, thrilled with how positive they were. Really, really excited about hearing your thoughts. And then, you know, I know that it is on the agenda for essentially an approval of preparing the toolkit. Depending on the outcome today, I'm excited about the potential to be able to wrap this up and hopefully get tools in your hands by Friday of this week. So love to hear your thoughts, and then I'll stick around for the vote, and then I think I'll hop off and get out of your hair.
All right, thank you, Ben. Is there questions and comments? This is a grand opportunity for us to discuss it another time. There were some good adjustments, so I want to hear from anybody.
I'd like to just see what we'll be voting on.
So how do you really summarize that? We look at our, you know, of course, the maple leaf, the white, the expanded color palette, the maple leaf being in most all of our, well, that maple leaf will be a brand icon. They'll end up in most everything that we do. So as you can see, it was in First Fridays, but it would also be hopefully integrated into our Delicious and a number of other activities that are happening downtown. And we saw those in our first presentation where you took Town and Gown, a few of the others, and showed how that would interact.
Exactly. I think one of the things that we had kind of introduced in the first wave, and I just for brevity didn't include them again in the conversation this morning, but that idea of color-based adaptation and expansion of the icon itself. We showed a Pride variation, we showed a Juneteenth variation, yes. Of course showed the town gown variation. So there's a lot of life that you can build into this very, very kind of succinct icon, but it starts to truly become yours. And that, you know, the maple leaf, the more that you use it, the more that you create different variations of it, the more dynamic it becomes. And obviously it's an icon and an image that the community is very, very used to. But one of the things that happens sometimes is you start to realize, well, we're the Maple Leaf City, so any maple leaf will do. And we're trying to build a certain level of expansion into the icon itself so that all of our partners in building this brand equity in our district are actually motivated to be part of our brand because they see its expansion and they see an opportunity to help play a part of making it theirs.
You have demonstrated incredible genius and creativity here, and so have the people who have voted. God definitely left that out of the genetic pool when he gave me my brain. That's why I asked to see what has been presented, what has been finally brought down to the balance, as we say, so that I have an idea of how it's been toned down and what we're really looking at now. I mean, I trust what you put together. I trust what my colleagues have voted on, or what you put together after, people have weighed in. And at this point, I need to look at something that's a little more honed down so that I can have some idea of what we're looking at. That's why I said, let me see what we're looking
Hey,
at.
Ben, can you go ahead and
Separate
pull up
slide.
the logo again? The
Absolutely.
4-quadrant logo?
Also, at our promotions committee meeting this week, we talked a little bit about rewording the narrative. I think we're mostly voting on the image. and the-
Yep. We'll
stuff.
control the
The
narrative.
narrative is not.
Absolutely. That narrative is probably best described as a living, breathing document that that you all are willing to, you're more than welcome to take and adapt and grow. And it might be that it's the kind of thing that as the downtown continues to evolve, your narrative itself also begins to evolve, because you've got a lot of really interesting opportunities and new connections that are kind of on the table for you all. And with each one of those, it changes the dynamic of how you talk about yourself and how you invite people in.
For this particular slide, are we looking at adopting both of these and having options, or is it one over the other?
Absolutely. I think that with the nature of with the color palette, especially with this idea of being able to kind of go through, and I think versatility in a community is key. It's a little bit different from an institutional standpoint. I've done enough work in Michigan to know that the bottom options might trigger anyone who might their blood might flow green and white. So I understand that colors are extremely important. I actually think that I showed two different colorways here to kind of plant the seed that you could probably have 4 different options, and depending on the way that the year goes, on the type of things that you're talking about, you'll have a certain appropriateness that just visually comes through. I do think that as we build out the final system and we give you all the tools, I do still think that we're going to lean towards that kind of primary blues as just a base combination because of the presence of blue and so much use of blue from the community. That's kind of your pedigree that's there. But we did want to introduce those options, not as pick this or pick that, but instead think of it as different size screwdrivers. Like you might just have something that a different colorway is going to work better for us. And that doesn't dilute the brand as long as we think it through on the front end and give you those tools as part of your brand toolkit.
Hey, Ben, just to expand on that, with the expanded color palette, is there kind of like percentage guidance on, the blues should be, 70% of what we do? If you use the orange, do it 10% or, some kind of guidance like that?
Yeah, and to be honest, that's a really interesting question. If you notice, I'll go back to the way that I recolored the icon. If you notice, as I went through and recolored the icon, you see that I moved the blues because I wanted the blues to have the primary percentage of the composition of the maple leaf. So you're probably sitting at about 50% blue and probably about say 30% in the green tones and 20% in your warm tones. And I think that icon is almost a nice representation of how you can kind of hit on a good color diversity without making it feel too cool all the time, too corporate all the time. But hopefully that will kind of help out. And when I build out the variations, I'll kind of build them as, you know, if there's one that feels like this is always going to tend a little bit more warm, I'll make sure you have the warm tones, and those seem to be the primary use, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
I like the fact that we can adapt these going forward for different things. And I wonder who has ownership of those potential changes. Like if we go off and do one for, you know, second Saturdays or something on our own, who creates or approves a new variation?
We would.
Okay.
We would do that. He's going to give us all of the fonts, you know, all of
Okay.
that thing. And so we'll have that ability to
So
do that.
people aren't spinning off
Right.
doing
Mhm.
whatever they want to with this kind of style guide. Okay.
So one thing, and I'm gonna go ahead and announce that I'm going to say something that I'm not educated about. But I was just informed that there is a new feature that has been integrated into Canva that allows you to share files and templates, but requires you to grant the permission first. And as I think that we shared with you all before, you all are one of 6 communities as part of a branding cohort where we're doing branding technical services for them across the state of Michigan. And as soon as we conclude those 6, we're going to have a series of implementation workshops where we work with the directors from all 6 communities. And that idea of usage, sharing, and ongoing control is definitely going to be a topic of that. But I want to dig into some of that Canva control. I think it's potentially really promising for us at minimizing the speed bumps while still maintaining enough order that we can make sure that our system is growing value for our community.
Mhm.
Other questions? Comments?
I really love that Adrian is first in this particular slide because it really shows front and center why we're here, and it personalizes it.
I'm glad you said that. I was a little hesitant. You know, I think that when I made the change, I had to acknowledge to myself that before I was trying to force an issue that I probably didn't need to force, and maybe I was trying to square peg a round hole problem. But from an overall dynamic with this kind of all caps modular design style, obviously the 2 layer very nicely, but because of that kind of custom nesting of the icon into the eye, it also just logistically makes it a lot easier for us to maximize our visual heights of both of our components of the what we're communicating. But I love the fact that it also reads as a place-based prominence. Sometimes it sets people off, and sometimes it's like, no, that feels right. I mean, we might say downtown Adrian instead of Adrian downtown, but at the end of the day, it's not really as much about explaining to someone, you know, an order as much as a place, and both of those things are true. So I'm glad that it reads to you as a prominence. I think that it made the system easier to know how to do it well and how to make it look right. So
Yes, thank you for that.
Other questions, comments? Ben, great work. Thank you for all the time and effort you've put into this, and we appreciate it. And as we get down into the board actions, we'll be talking about it again real quick before we make any vote moving forward. Again, I'd like to clarify, and I agree with Tara, it is not the narrative that we're voting on today. That has got some work to be done with it, and that's great. And then I also can see the way I see this is this wide versatility that we can use this with. And so today, when we say, okay, we're going to accept that, I don't think we're saying forever that's going to be the way that is. I think it is a starting point of some really good work, and then we can, as we grow, continue to use that as a base. So, thank you, Ben.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much. Appreciate the time this morning.
Also, I've been paying attention while we've been traveling to Detroit and things, looking at some of the newest marketing and stuff. He's right. The way he has it laid out, the visualization of it, it's much more modern and it's correct, in my opinion. It's looks good. Thank you.
Awesome.
If you would, I'd love to write that down, and I need to share that with my wife because that might be the first time that it has ever been stated like that. So I appreciate that.
Hey, we're recording, Ben, so you can play
Oh,
it back as your
fantastic.
ringtone. Yep.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
All right. Excellent. We'll move on to our Main Street Director's Report, Jay.
Mural project. So I've been working on a mural project for downtown Adrian. I'd like to see it look something like Bright Walls in Jackson. Have a committed relationship now with Adrian for Center for the Arts. They have an expert on murals in their group and will be working with us. I'll be calling on the design committee to help us establish a steering committee of stakeholders from the downtown area to move forward. Talk to in detail with the city administrator, and murals fall into it as long as it's not a sign, which I will. There'll be a program document to share that information with the design committee and the steering committee to move forward. There are a ton of opportunities downtown for that project. Taking us right into the next step, the vibrancy grant. There was a vibrancy grant that became available from Michigan Main Street for just Main Street communities. The governor will be announcing tomorrow or Thursday or Friday, I believe. And we were the recipient of a $25,000 vibrancy grant for the mural program. So that will really kick us off and go forward. There's a 15% match for that, but I think once we announce the mural program, we'll be able to easily fundraise to support that 15% match moving forward. So great news. We're only one of 8 communities in Michigan to receive that grant. And it's really designed to bring vibrancy to your community, to help the economic vitality and really grow from there. So I think it's a great seed money for us, and we should be able to get a couple pretty decent murals out of that from that money. Next, and just following the mural concept, one of the places that we're looking at doing the first mural is the Gene Christopher lot. Looking at that opportunity there. I have connections, I have contact in with the building owner, and so we're going to be discussing what that would look like. But that brings us up to some potential liability with the Gene Christopher lot and people trouting on it. And so what Dusty and I are going to try to speak to the land bank with your permission to see about acquiring that lot. It's just an initial conversation, see where their feelings are, but people taking pictures, different selfies, different things with a potential mural on there. We felt that the liability would be pretty great, and we would like to control that property, I think, going forward, if there's any additional uses in the future. One topic that came out last week and I wanted to share with you as well is the East Church Street parking lot closure that's happening. That parking lot right behind the Hammerman building, when the construction starts, we'll be closing approximately 23 parking spaces for an extended period of time. Not really, we looked at various ways, myself, director of DPW, the city administrator, we walked the parking lot, we looked at options, and that's really the only safe place that it can be. If you move it out, it'll be connected to the building. If you move it out away from there, you're going to have equipment and construction workers traveling, and it's just not, it's a safety issue. It's really a public safety issue. It will put a little bit of strain in that area, and we're looking at options to help alleviate that strain. And hopefully we'll have some answers soon on that. Last thing I have for everyone is the real estate training. So I went to some training in Milan yesterday and Monday with Michigan Main Street. You all got a little bit of swag from Michigan Main Street. It's their 20th anniversary. And so they're pushing out some new logos and rebranding themselves. And at the training, it really talked about really 4 stages excuse me. 4 stages of real estate development, starting with like just marketing vacancies that we have, and we're getting some templates to help us do that and what that looks like, all the way up to actually development agreements, looking at performas, how they stack dollars in there, and what becomes viable and doesn't become viable. So it was a great opportunity. There are 4 classes that led up to it that were all done on YouTube, and I think all of you have the links to those. If you're interested in real estate or real estate development, or just in some of the marketing aspect, I highly recommend looking at those videos, because it gives you a good understanding of what people, developers and real estate, buyers are looking at, and how we can, help improve the vibrancy and the occupancy rate in our downtown.
All right, questions for Jay?
Jay, when I got the email as a business about the East Church Street parking lot closures, I know you had said some of the measurements have changed from the original email. Is that right? Or is it the most updated?
That's the most updated
Okay.
version. Yep, that's the most updated version.
Thank you.
Other questions for Jay? Comments? Jay, thank you for your report. Move on to Brad.
Can you hear me?
Jim.
Okay, excellent. Distributed copies of financials. We basically didn't really have anything out, that was odd or something that we need to really take note of from last month. On the 3rd page of the revenue expenditure report, you'll see a yellow box with a number of $43,300, which that's basically the remaining amount of money that we have for this fiscal year. Immediately below that, you're going to see 3 red boxes. Those are set expenses that are coming. And then in the remainder of the fiscal year, and we do still have a little bit of general fund contribution from the city that's still remaining. So my estimate is that we've probably got about $9,000 left but we still have to pay for First Fridays, advertising, some other obligations that we still have going on. My estimate is this time is probably that we're going to be on track for a balanced budget for the fiscal year. No surplus, no deficit, unless we buy some tables in a minute.
So we spent a bunch of money today.
And yeah, so everything seems to be on track on budget.
Questions for Brad? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to accept the financial report as presented. There's a motion. Is there support? There's been a motion and support. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Brad, thank you. All right, Greg, are you up there? You are up there.
I'm here. Thank you. I have a few things I'd like to talk about this morning. First of all, I'll let you all know that we had an initial presentation from Smith Group regarding the Maiden Lane, I'll call it activation, and what that might look like as it relates to the Gene Christopher lot that you were just discussing, the connection through Maiden Lane and potentially the property that's occupied by 116 and 118 South Main, which the city owns and which are in pretty rough shape. Great ideas that they had in terms of outdoor space and connectivity between those areas and through the block, but some more rethinking will go on based on comments at the meeting, I think. So looking forward to having something to share with you all in the relatively near future about that. First Friday this month, we had a bit of a hiccup with our promotions, I guess I would say. This was the first time we kind of had our digital banners up and running. They've been spotty in terms of their performance up to this point, and we had a bit of a disconnect, I guess, as it relates to the messaging. I got an email from Meredith at the morning of the event that the promotions committee was not in accord with the graphic that had been prepared for two of the slides, which were the two that related to First Fridays and Cinco de Mayo, including the one that had the sponsors graphic on it. And so we did do as asked, and we took those down, but given the timing, we didn't have an opportunity to put anything else back up. I think it would be good. I know that the Main Street structure is new to y'all, and we're working through this, figuring out how it's going to work with the basic committees. But I think it would be good to have some clarification on the role of the committees. Are the event committees subcommittees of those committees? What are the authority? What's the authority of those committees as it relates to decisions for their events versus the authority of the overarching committee, whichever one it might be, so that we all are speaking with one voice in moving these events forward, and keeping in mind that there is, as I understand it, a distinction between your events. You have DDA sponsored events, an example of which is First Fridays, which are, as I understand it, your events. And we therefore don't charge you a fee, for example, for closing the streets and for the activities that the city does in relation to those events, because we understand them to be your events. And then there are DDA supported events, an example of which would be Our Delicious. And those events are more independent, but also responsible for more of their own activities. And so I think just some discussion at some point amongst yourselves and clarity with your committees and subcommittees as to how that authority structure is supposed to work would be helpful. And then in a similar vein, when you first got a draft of your brand manual, I did share that with the city commission by way of my weekly report that I do to them. And at least some of the commissioners indicated that they would like to be consulted as it relates to that branding. It is pretty significant for the city's image. Our downtown events are our most visible events. And so I would encourage you to do that. Maybe your consideration of the brand manual is in the nature of a blessing from your group, subject to consultation with the city commission. I went through a branding exercise with the planning consulting firm that I used to be principal planner for before I came to the city. It was a great exercise. It was quite consultative as amongst the users, which were the members of the firm. But the result then ended up being a brand manual that we had. And as Ben said, that you could use those elements as guidance in selecting your presentation as long as you follow the brand manual. And so I hope that will be the result at the end of the day of your process. I understand that you're anxious to get it up and running as we're into the summer and event season, but I think making sure that everybody's consulted would be important. So that I'm happy to answer any questions. Don't have anything else that I wanted to say.
Questions or comments for Greg? All right, Greg, thank you for your report.
Thank you.
All right, we will now move on to board action. So I'll move it back over to Jay.
Yeah, so the first thing is the recommendation of the promotion committee that the Main Street DDA board approve purchase of tables and chairs for the Market Pavilion. Currently, the Market Pavilion has tables and chairs that have been here, I would guess, maybe since World War II. The tables weigh about 150 pounds, they're heavy, and they've done their job, you know, but we want to continue to make this a space. Promotion committees looked at a couple of options, and the ask is for 100 chairs that would come on carts, would be stored and have covers to protect them, keep dust off of them. And then 8-foot foldable tables, both components would be black, to provide some opportunities for, seating and such. And that would be those 8-foot tables, there'd be 12 of them, and that would be about 100 seats at those 8-foot tables.
In your packets, you have
The supporting
the
documentation.
sporting docs.
I'm sorry, can you just clarify, these are for the farmer's market vendors to
Nope,
use?
not for the vendors to use. Nope, this would be for the pavilion. So as we have events that people want to rent tables and chairs, we would charge them a fee to rent the tables and chairs. Also for our city band, because they do use the chairs that are there, and some of them are kind of they're questionable for them to use. So we'd like to, support them to use those chairs as well.
So just a note that a black table under the sun is really probably not ideal, just a comment.
And obviously, these would be owned by us.
Correct.
Main Street, so like, for example, I could use them for Artalicious as well. Unless there's events going on at the pavilion.
I would think so.
Yeah.
That just saved me expense. on that too.
No, I understand. Yeah, absolutely.
No, I mean, if I was running the concert on Saturday night,
Oh, the DDA event.
the DDA.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point, though.
Mhm.
And I guess you could look into some color variations if there is, and if there is, I don't know. But I do think the expansive use in the future, the vision we have for that space, with the new bathrooms, and then hopefully more electric being plugged into the overall, and then even maybe a change to the overall look of it all. We were talking about maybe a roof to the whole structure, if that was possible, but that'd be down the road. But I think a lot of these types of decisions, we're saying, okay, we're maybe not acting perfectly like that right now, but hopefully we'll have like Cinco de Mayo on Saturday. You might want to explain how well that worked.
Yeah, so Cinco de Mayo event on Saturday. Bobby Dela Cruz, Teresa Martinez really threw that event on and couldn't have enough nice things to say about the facility, the space. The comment was, why doesn't the city use this event space more often? It was great for what they wanted to do. They were overjoyed and already want to book it for next year. So it worked out very well and it was great. They probably had between 800-900 people there, if I were to guess, and it was packed. So it was a great event for them.
Which is great news for our community to start using some of our spaces that are not necessarily central downtown, that has traditionally been our primary space. We want them to use our other spaces. So that's great news for a lot of reasons.
So I think there is some flexibility and just not just the pavilion for these tables and chairs that as we partner, to give us a little bit of capacity from that front.
So David, if you want to use those tables, you're gonna get your ass in here.
I'm glad you continued with that.
Yeah.
Got it.
So you get use it.
Jay, that total ask is 3,200, is that right?
Yeah, 3219 and some change.
I don't know why you don't think black is a good idea, Jerry.
Have you sat at a black table under the sun? It is not fun.
I think when we looked at some of them, the white chairs were really physically bulky and the black ones came on a roller that would be easy to store.
Chairs is different. I think it's a table that would be the concern, I think.
And then we wanted them to match, the tables and the chairs to match.
I mean, I don't feel that strongly. I'm not suggesting a change. I just need to know that.
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely.
So essentially you're asking to take virtually all but $500 of the surplus we have for the year for this 3,800. Is that the number?
3,200.
32. Okay, got it.
Would you say we had 9,000 surplus?
4,000.
4,000? Okay. Okay. So there's clarity.
Our fiscal year ends next month, though. Is that right?
That's correct. Yep.
Other questions?
I just, what is the tabletop? Is it a hard surface, soft surface, tabletop?
It's hard plastic. It's that resin, it's that resin.
Oh,
plastic.
okay,
Yep.
just double checking. Didn't read that.
Yep.
Okay.
That'll be durable.
We really did like the white ones that were real like wedding looking, but they were just so bulky. We were kind of concerned about where to stick them.
All right, any other questions? There's been a recommendation from the promotion committee to purchase tables and chairs in the amount of $3,219. $3,219. So can I get a motion to accept or to execute that? There's a motion. Is there support?
Support.
All right, is there any further discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. All right, move to the next item.
This one I'll go to Dave.
Oh, yep, this one goes to Dave. You're right.
Okay, all right. Sorry, I do not have the paperwork in front of us here, but obviously these last few years I've been working with the Artalicious. We've been working with Artalicious in regards to managing the Saturday night event as a fundraising event. And what I'm asking for is just a budget for the next coming year for $7,000 to put our event together at Artalicious again, which would be obviously paying for stage and performance of bands, and then renting other tables and chairs possibly.
It'll be important, Jay, if you'll clarify where we were last year, how that all played out, and why there might be an expansion of the budget for this year.
So we had, last year we budgeted $6,000, spent just over 47, if my recollection is correct. And they've raised over $5,600. So it was actually a net positive for the event. This year we had budgeted $5,000 for the event, kind of based on that number from last year. So this would really be an ask for just $2,000 additional dollars. And part of that ask also would be expanding the usage of the stage to Sunday, to bring in more local entertainment, with their Don and his organization working to bring different artists to the stage on Sunday to really expand that live entertainment opportunity.
So technically, the request is just a budgetary request and for the next
Right.
fiscal year.
If I'm not mistaken, the budget was 10,000 last year.
It was 10,000.
Initially.
Yeah,
So
it
now
was
we're
initially.
reducing it to 7,000.
Oh, thank you.
Yep, good call.
Yeah, that was pertinent. That was material.
But we came in way under budget last year.
Last year, yeah.
But we raised more than what we
Yes.
spent.
Yes. Okay, excellent.
Be part of that, like,
Budgetary.
Yeah,
We accept the budget. You're right.
that's why I asked.
She's absolutely right. We would accept it at budget time when we accept our budget, correct?
Yeah.
So,
I just want like, move to support the idea or something. I don't know. if you-
Well, actually, we may have already voted to accept the
We already
budget this
accepted the
year, which
budget, yes.
was it set for 5,000?
It was set for 5,000.
Okay.
in the
so
budget.
now it's
So-
a budget amendment.
So we need an amendment. We need it.
So I need a motion for a budget amendment to change it from 5,000 to 7,000.
So moved.
There's a motion. Is there support?
Support.
Any further discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. All right, branding approval. So we still have been on the line. If you have more questions, more discussion, again, I'll make a reiteration of a comment that Greg made too, is that if we have a motion to accept the base and information that was provided to us with the thought that we would have a branding manual at the end of this to be able to reference, and that before we move forward, that we would be subject to the consultation of the Adrian City Commission and after we today say we sort of approve it. But I think that was the point there, is that we'll take it to the next city commission meeting and present it to them. So, question.
Commission members part of the Ben's visit here, were they included in any of that? I'm concerned about pushback.
None of them were at any of the meetings, but they did receive the initial presentation, so they've seen the presentation. Actually, the mayor was. The mayor was part of it. The mayor was here, and she was part of one of the meetings as well.
And again, if we get there and they're like, well, we don't like this, and it has to come back to the drawing board, it's still possible, that's possible procedure, procedural thing. So that's why we got to go there, get their buy-in, understand the process, make sure they understand why we did the color palettes, why we chose the various fonts and the like. So may call upon some of our promotion committee to be at that meeting too, so that they can help answer questions and the like as we move forward. All right, with that, if there are any further questions, I'll entertain a motion to accept our branding with the subject to the consultation of Adrian City Commission.
So moved.
Support.
There's motion and support. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. All right, we move forward. Committee reports. Meredith, you're on this page here for promotion committee.
Thank you. The promotion committee has been meeting regularly every other week. I think we've covered most of our most recent topics of conversation. I'll open it up to the committee. Is there anything we haven't already touched on that you guys want to bring up?
I think I'd like to circle back to what Greg was discussing.
Yep.
When he suggested that we get some clarification here, since everybody is present here today. First Friday, it falls, from my understanding, underneath promotion committees, correct? Is that correct?
That's the way the structure.
Right, and it is a subcommittee, right? And we are supposed to have a representative, which is Darcy, correct, on the first Friday committee. And what happened the other day was we felt somewhat blindsided by some of the imagery. It wasn't brought to our attention, it wasn't discussed. And so can we talk about this a little more?
So as it relates to specifically the digital banners, the question I guess at hand is who is responsible for what goes on those digital banners? What kind of approval process do we have? Is there discussion that needs to take place prior to any event and review of such items that may be presented during those events that we sponsor? There is some clarification that I'd like to see in that, the city has its own promoting that will be done for other types of events that are outside of our preview. I can't think of anything right at the moment, but it would have that type of flexibility. And it is something that, of course, the city commission funded. So, but at the same time, they're a great tool for us to get messaging across. But as Greg was saying, can we all be on the same page? Can we all talk about it before it happens and not react to something and see it after the fact? So it is my, it's one of those things where do we have authority there, and to what extent, and how do we clarify that, and all in good spirit? And it's not like we want to dominate that, but I do think it offers a great enhancement and messaging for our events and for our people downtown. So but again, at the end of the day, I think that it's the authority of our city administrator and the commission to tell us whether we have and what type of authority we have there. What would you guys envision as a good, as our Main Street board, how much influence should we have over that? So I guess if I could start the conversation there.
I think it was less influence than it was communication. It was a lack of communication. We have a representative on the board and we weren't shown any of this imagery. And so then day of, we see, an image that felt very culturally appropriated without having discussed why it was on there and whether it was approved and how it came to be.
I think part of it too is the committee doesn't understand the process, and that is primarily because we're a brand new committee, I'm sure. And I think we don't understand like the cadence with which the First Friday Committee meets, how their decisions are made, what the process is. We don't want to step into it with something that may have been approved by a sponsor. But I will admit the committee doesn't understand how that process worked, didn't understand how that process worked in the background with the First Friday Committee, and just saw the banner when we came downtown to meet the morning of First Friday, and all of us were a little bit concerned, given some feedback we've gotten from other folks about the appropriateness of the sombrero. It was a Cinco de Mayo banner with a sombrero and maracas and some imagery like that, that we felt like really had the capability of insulting some of our community. Thank you.
With that, whether it is or wasn't or not, I think you get right back to communication. I think it's going to keep falling right back to it as to whether or not we have open lines of communication in that front. If I heard the city administrator correctly, he wants us to clarify and try to get a clarification. So I think we all believe that First Fridays is a DDA sponsored event, that it's a partnership, and that we have four major committees if we adopt a Main Street approach, and we are doing that, and where it naturally falls is under the promotion committee. So maybe it is one of those that any event that we're sponsoring and the like, or sponsored events, and maybe you can help me with the discussion on this, is that there would need to be any digital banners that relate to that event would need to come in front of the promotion committee for full communication. So
It seems really like this is actually maybe a bigger question than just the digital boards, because somebody could make a poster with all good intention that would still have could have the potential to have the same impact. So I don't know if Michigan Main Streets has sort of like we're going through the branding process to end up with a whole, like, here's how you can use our brand. Here are the colors that you can use.
Mhm.
Here's our imagery. Is there something related to that is, kind of a 2023's guide to creating good promotional materials? Because it's easy to make a mistake. It's super easy to put something out that can be offensive to anybody. And of course, there's lines and all of that stuff that have to be careful. And I guess we have this organization. I don't know if they have something like that or some kind of training, perhaps.
So the topics of training came up in a discussion on Monday when I was in Milan, and the gamut came up, everything from fundraising and what does that look like to different real estate things, obviously. DEI was one of those conversations. And they're looking for the expert to come in and really share that with everybody. I think it might be happening in September. But as a branding, as a guide for, the do's and don'ts, there isn't one today. But I know that they're looking at those opportunities.
I mean, maybe it's something, if we plan posters for the next imagery for the next 6 months of posters or whatever events, 6 months of events, would Ben be willing to, if he is an expert, can we just run those by him as an initial, like, he's not seeing anything alarming, so we feel confident while we create our own system?
He's not on, but I think I could probably get that. I could reach out to Michigan Main Street, see if that's something that we could do. Absolutely. Yeah.
no, I think you're absolutely right, Jerry. I think this is we talk about the branding book, the manual that we have, it falls right in that. It falls because not only it's just our branding, but what is acceptable in our downtown, not just on digital banners as well, right? So the whole concept in its totality. But again, just for clarification, the First Friday Committee falls under the Promotions Committee. And it has been a stellar organization, stellar committee that has done great work and has been, had done a lot of work before we organized as a Main Street.
They've been an anchor.
organizations.
They've been an anchor.
And they really have been an anchor, and it's not to take away any of that. And hopefully that the strength of that committee just continues to shine. But integrating some of these things, it can create some, uncomfortableness because we're sort of grabbing onto everything and saying, hey. And so I don't want to discourage anybody on that. It's just a matter of open lines of communication, getting us and continuing our partnerships the way they're supposed to be, and being respectful and doing what we need to do. So I don't think there's an action item there, but if we all agree, that's the way the structure is at this point, that we would work to the end of making sure that that branding manual addresses such items. Is that good? Excellent. All right. Anything else from Meredith or any of the other committee members there? We'll move on to First Fridays and Michelle Dewey.
Hi, well, I was gonna start with the positive, but since we're on this topic, I guess I'll just start there. Trying to think how to frame this. So obviously, I'm the one that came up with those graphics. I'm the one that comes up with the graphics for all of the First Friday events. We have a committee now. We didn't have a committee until I guess maybe a few months ago when I requested more help. This is the first I've heard that committee falls under the promotions committee, or that there's things that need to be, approved. So I'm all for that. I definitely need some clarification and then also some guidance on how that's going to work exactly. So these are obviously large scale events. Everything happens pretty quickly. Trying to just meet with the First Friday committee alone is extremely challenging. Trying to get feedback is challenging. Everybody's busy. So then, another committee on top of that, I guess my question would be, how is that going to work? I had no idea the promotions committee was meeting as often as it is. That's the first I've heard of that. There's, I think, just a really big lack of communication going on. So any more information I can get on that would be great. And also, we need help with First Fridays. So anybody that wants to, weigh in on those decisions, I would also ask that you participate in the events. And, we need volunteers, we need people there. So that would be really helpful too. And I know some of you do, but we definitely need more. And maybe a good idea would be for the promotions committee and the First Friday committee to actually meet together or have some communication between those two. That would make sense to me. The logo that was up for First Fridays, that's the first I've seen it. The committee has not seen it at all. So that was a little disappointing that was voted on and we didn't get to have any input whatsoever. First Friday has its own branding. It's had it for several years. I definitely would have liked to have some input on that. So obviously this is something I'm very passionate about because I've been doing it for many years and kind of helped make it what it is, I guess you would say. So it's really important to me. On to the positive, May was great. The weather was really good. We had a great turnout. June is looking really good as well. Hopefully the weather stays the same. June's event is Hot Wheels. Those banners are already up. So if anyone has an issue with those banners, please let me know. Back to the Bricks. This isn't really part of First Fridays, but a representative from Back to the Bricks was at the May event. He was downtown checking out how we park the cars and how our system works. He was really impressed. And they're super excited to be here in June for Back to the Bricks. So, that's all I have.
Michelle, do you have a scheduled meeting for for our next one? I know that we did a doodle poll sometime yesterday. My mind flashes by. I didn't really do it. I just sent it to Ashley. But did we confirm a date for the fundraising? For the First Friday committee?
Not yet.
Not
I haven't
yet.
been able to find a date that I can get enough people on. So I'm working on it.
We go ahead and expand it then right now and have the promotion committee at that particular one.
Sure. We also have some policies we're trying to work on for upcoming First Friday events, which I was going to bring up today, but in light of the hierarchy that's been explained, it makes sense that we go through that with the promotions committee before we do anything else with that. So
Is the promotion committee good with that?
Sure. We also meet every other Friday, so you're welcome to
Every other Friday.
present it or bring, yeah.
Every other Friday, 9 o'clock in the morning here in the back room. Not this Friday, but next. Is that right? Is our next meeting? So
Which is what date? What is that?
I believe it's the 18th.
18th.
Yep.
Nope,
19th.
19th. Thank you. Maybe we could, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, just a comment on the need for volunteers. I hear people say we need volunteers, and yet I'm never explained what those roles that are available are. And, you know, at various points, I have used Facebook to generate some volunteers for things downtown. I'm happy to help do that. I just don't know what roles are needed and what time people are needed. So if I can get some clarification.
Sure, we need people to park cars. We need people to empty
Yeah,
trash.
in writing,
cans.
probably in an email would be super helpful. That way I
great.
just have the details.
Another thing that came up at the committee meeting was creating kind of a job description for volunteers, various categories of volunteers, opportunities that are available, and potentially even creating a Facebook page that's an offshoot of the DDA's Facebook account that aggregates all volunteer opportunities available in downtown, whether those, we see that as being everything from DDA events to town and gown events to cross, you know, whatever needs volunteers. That's kind of a one-stop shopping place for people who are interested in volunteering to go see what their opportunities are. We don't have that up and running yet. It's kind of an idea, but we are actively looking at potential job descriptions for volunteers. I think what would be helpful maybe when Promo and First Friday meet is to identify what sorts of volunteers they need, put that in writing, and like Jerry said, put that out as an opportunity where people are clear on what times they're needed, what they'd be doing, what they need to have with them or be prepared for, and that sort of thing, so that we're able to more comprehensively use the volunteer power that we have.
I think there's great comments. You know, I've done it myself. I've asked for volunteers and then they get here. I'm like, I don't know where to send you and the like. We've done it for years, haven't we? We've done a bunch of that kind of work, which then doesn't create any adhesion to that volunteer. They go around, said they didn't have that organized and the like. But I think we're really improving right now. And I think that's great work. You do have to define the roles. And then, of course, a menu of opportunities for our community. And you know, there are a number of people out there would love to do it. I just know there are a number of students that love to do it. There's a number of retirees. There's a lot of people, but they always think the same thing that you just said. What am I going to do? What do you want me to do? And so that great work could happen at that committee meeting. Excellent. And again, Hot Wheels is coming up in June, another great one. And how many people do you estimate came last Friday? Could you get a?
I mean, probably one of the bigger First Fridays that we've had. I would say over 4,000 people were here. I mean, it was packed.
Impressive. I could hear the bands at my house, which I always into.
It was a great day for sales too at our shop.
What's that?
It was a great evening for, yep.
Oh, that's great. Wonderful. Awesome, great work, awesome work, and we'll get her done. All right, any other questions on that? We'll move to town and gown. Any activity on town and gown at this time?
No, haven't met at this time.
All right.
Just a couple of things that I would say, the last 2 weekends, Adrian College and Siena Heights listed their commencements of the thousands of local businesses, services, and use there. I at least I can speak for Siena Heights. Looking at for August 30th, to welcome all of our students back. Adrian College and Siena Heights, we have leadership working together from student engagement offices and hoping that we can include other groups, educational groups as well on that night.
Do you have a planned committee meeting coming anytime soon?
I would say, I think they're talking, like
Yeah.
Adrian and Siena, student engagement are talking about the details of what festivities they want to have, but no.
Where my brain was going with that is that, you know, we had that initial look of what town and gown might look like with the new maple leaf and the new branding. But back to school, back to school bash should probably have something variation of something like that as well and integrate it. So that'd be some work of the committee.
Yeah,
That's a little bit ancillary to what we're, to the
Yeah.
guts of it all, but I would love to take the opportunity if it's the
Well,
interest of the town. of
and
Guthrie.
I know, our student engagement director did put forward an idea to have one T-shirt instead of an Adrian College T-shirt and one Siena Heights T-shirt to just combine forces and put all schools on it, have more of that town and gown unity. So I think that would speak to it even more if we could market our brand.
Yeah, that's nice. And can we have a bucking husky too? Instead of just instead of a bulldog? Sorry, I'm a little biased. Halo, you know who Halo is? We gotta make a bigger thing. Yeah, we're being careful. All right, any questions for Michael? Thank you.
Thanks.
Organization committee, no, have not met, but I will say I'm encouraged by the information that Jay is bringing back from his Main Street training. We are starting to really hone in on our messaging. And you've heard me say this at least 50 times that we're going to get together with our fundraising committee. But if we can just get these final touches put on that, I think we're going to have ourselves a nice presentation for our stakeholders. So I'll continue to focus and we'll get there. Economic vitality doesn't meet very often, and again, still sort of developing. Design committee, we have some sign approvals, do we not, Jerry? One.
One sign approval. I don't, Michelle, do you have that image?
So no, we don't, I didn't put it in the packet, no,
Oh,
but
you
it's 118 West Maumee Street. It's Ameriprise Financial.
It's a sign quite similar in style to what was approved for the accountant at the corner. So it's a horizontal sign coming out from the building with Ameriprise Financial. It's become kind of a standard looking, nice looking sign downtown. It was approved by members of the design subcommittee.
All right, so. Yeah, so I just need a motion to accept the recommendation of the sign committee.
Should we see it?
Yeah, I guess we can ask,
See if I can maybe pull it up.
Oh,
you can
I
email
can
it.
just put it up on my phone.
You could probably email it over to Michelle
Yeah, I'll do that.
and she can pop it up on the screen.
118 West Maumee.
Mhm.
All right, forward into Michelle right now.
Thank you. While she's doing that, it might be worth noting, late yesterday afternoon, we got a request for approval on a sign on the stucco building next door to Hooligans, which is a large building where they intend to have several different businesses inside of it, sort of like the design gallery. When the committee started actively approving and reviewing and approving signs, there was a lot of conversation about the signage over the design gallery. And, there's kind of because those businesses change relatively frequently because there are so many inside of one business, the desire to have something more in keeping with the historic nature of the downtown instead of just a placard that goes up and keeps changing was really part of a lot of conversation at the design committee level. This group adopted as a kind of stopgap. We borrowed a historic sign guideline from another community, which does include the addressing of that as the placard signs are not really desirable in a historic downtown. We didn't feel inclined to approve. We didn't even have time to approve the sign application that was submitted yesterday. I did ask Jeremiah, who is the code enforcement on signage, to let the sign manufacturer know that we wouldn't be able to approve that sign at this meeting. The committee didn't have time to review it, but that we would also like to go back to our guidelines and make sure that the sign, we have the opportunity to help them find something more appropriate for the downtown. We're probably going to get some pushback. That's why I'm letting you know that. You might hear some pushback from the building owner, the business owner who is not the building owner, because the same sign is approved at the design center, but those signs are grandfathered in because they were there before we have adopted these temporary guidelines. So Just giving you all a heads up, we'll hope to review that before our next meeting and maybe help the business owner understand the need to have something a little more attractive.
I make a motion to approve the sign as presented.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
There's a motion. Is there support? Is there any further discussion?
Are we going to regularly approve these horizontal signs in every guide?
Yeah, that's a really desired style,
Yeah.
you know.
Them pop up. I saw one in there when this was off.
Yeah,
Did we approve? I'm just-
I don't know where that is.
Yeah, no, I've not seen it.
I haven't-
approved, but you guys have one.
No.
It's
We did that?
We did not approve. We did not, that time was not presented to the committee.
I was gonna take it down.
It's in violation. Let the signing begin.
I did talk to, so just for a reference on that, well, go ahead and finish the vote and then I will comment on that.
Martha, or Margaret.
We've got a motion and a support on this
I'll
Mayor
volunteer.
Price side.
Thank you, Meredith. Further discussion regarding that sign? Hearing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same.
Get on.
So I did speak to Jeremiah about the Rains and Reigns attorney sign. It was just a replacement of the sign that was the structure, and it's almost identical to the one that was there previously by Maple City Financial. So they just changed essentially the name and nothing else to that.
Yeah.
There was some question whether it needed to be approved or not, so I can follow back on that.
I mean, we really trust and rely on Jeremiah to know that it's meeting the code. So if the code has been met, I mean, I don't think it has to come to us. It's so, I
I
trust.
don't know, that's touchy for me. To me, it's a fine line, but I would err on the side of us approving it because there could be a variation that we won't like one time, and I'd rather have that as precedent.
I agree.
So I think, if we can walk that backwards a little bit, make sure that's good. Yep. Even if they're just replacing a sign and there's any material name change of any kind, unless it's an exact replica. I would have to say that we
Sure.
want to look at it one time.
Yep.
All right,
For the suit not seen, we have a sign.
we do. It's a touchy subject, and the sign. There's a lot of them. So. And again, we're working in positive, good faith. We're just wanting to do what our purpose is, and that is to make sure it's aesthetically acceptable to the historic downtown and what we're doing. So thank you for all that work. It's brave work. All right, we'll move on to Tim. You got anything for us?
Good morning, all. A couple of interesting or exciting things going on. We have several industry collaboratives that we work with. We've created a winery collaborative, a handful of the wineries in the county. We've worked with them. We've applied for a grant to help them purchase a mobile semi-automatic bottling line, because they're all bottling wines, but no one has enough volume to buy a whole bottling line. So this will be mobile. We'll go to your winery, then your winery, then your winery. So, fingers crossed on that one. And then also the winery collaborative is working with Visit Lenawee. We put together a river raisin wine trail that will be May 20th. So save the date. Our healthcare work group is working right now with SHU, put together a medical career exploration day. It'll be a day camp for junior high and high school students. That's going to be June 14th at SHU. What else we got going? We've received, I think I might have talked about this last time, a technical assistance grant from the state of Michigan on childcare planning. We all know that there's some issues with childcare in, I think, the country, let alone Lenawee County. So this will be a Hillsdale, Monroe, Lenawee. We're the fiduciary on this one and leading it to bring a technical expert in and help study what are the hurdles and then how do we address them. So we've just got the grant. We're just putting together the speaker, the company that will take care of that for us. And then we'll report back. Let's see what else we got going here. Oh, and working with the school districts. I have put together an Adopt a District program. Working to get local businesses and employees more involved in the districts, in the schools, such as speaking to students about careers, and for companies to go in and talk about what they do. Sponsoring field trips related to their industry, serving as experts in the field. If a teacher wants someone to come in, if you're an HR person, maybe the teacher wants some help on teaching the students, resumes. I think we all could use some help on our resumes, that kind of work. So we're working with, I think 3 or 4 districts at this point on that one. And then for upcoming events, our economic luncheon is May 15th at the center, obviously at noon. Stephanie Ludwig, the program director for U of M's Economic Growth Institute, will be the keynote speaker. Our friends at Launch Lenawee, we have our orientation day, May 17th at 5 o'clock at the Armory for people interested in that. And then lastly, our Hot Job Summit. We're working with ISD for the last several years on a hot job summit. We've commissioned a study on hot jobs for Lenawee County and our 4 or 5 county region that we present to the ISD. The CTE committee will be there. That's the continuing education career and technical education committee. So the study is an input into what a curriculum the ISD and the schools will use going forward. Do we add something? Do we take something away? And so it's open to the public, hoping for employers to be there to get more input into these, what we're determining are the hot jobs for Lenawee County. May 18th, 9:30 at our office. They're going to use our conference room for that. It'll be an hour long. Any questions?
Any questions for Tim? Tim, thank you for
Thank you.
Are there any other DDA matters that our board members would like to bring to the table? Hearing none, we'll move on to public comment. Please state your name and address. Just kidding, Dan.
Don Taylor, 475 Meadowbrook Drive, Adrian, Michigan, 49221. I'm the only person here who has either 3 former or current mayors living in his neighborhood. How about that?
Something.
I'm here representing our delicious. First of all, thank you for partnering with us again. The last couple of years have been pretty cool stuff, actually. On Saturday night, we're so excited again to be doing 2 nights or 2 days. And so really excited about having the band on the stage on the second day. There's so much local talent available around here, but I understand, and I've not been able to actually confirm this, so I'll try to have a report for you next month. But I understand that David Thomas is organizing a new rock band, and he'll be the lead guitarist and singer. So stand by. They'll be performing from 11 o'clock Saturday until 1 o'clock Sunday morning. Anyway, we really appreciate your partnership. It's always a lot of fun, and cost us a little bit more money this year with the new downtown fees, but that's okay. We're happy to do that. And we're also funding the entertainment on Sunday. So be careful what you charge us, Thomas. Okay. So, thanks.
Thank you, Don. Other public comment? All right. Great meeting today, guys. A lot of details we're starting to get into, as you can see. I think the committees are starting to fire up, and we're starting to see some of the fruits of the labors that we did for becoming a Main Street organization. Big exciting events that, as you can see at the bottom of the page, that are coming up. So and just to clarify, the second Tuesday will be June 13th, as to be clear on that date. But beyond that, I have no other comments. Is there any board comments? Yes.
One question. Are we worried about the loss of all these parking spaces with all these downtown events? Has that been a concern, or are we worried about that at all? 23 spots we're gonna lose. Is that gonna carry into our summer events or not really?
It's always a concern, anytime we lose parking downtown, it's a concern, especially with the momentum we've got and the increased traffic. So we're looking at some options. There may be some new opportunities available for us, but we'll address that as it becomes more more known. We're, we're taking into consideration with those spaces, what we do in those areas, so.
Like the car shows and things like that, don't those happen back there?
Car shows happen on the street. There is one event that's happening on second Tuesdays. It's back there and it happened last night. The parking lot isn't closed yet, but we're gonna look to see in June to see how that impacts that and what that looks like.
It is back there where Novus hosts some stuff. I'm, as a business owner, more concerned about my tenants and the day-to-day function
Sure.
and the bigger events, because,
Yeah.
there are people that live downtown too, that will be losing their parking there
It's pretty important
for
construction.
almost a year. It is,
Yeah,
yes.
it is pretty critical. I'm wondering if they could move it over to behind our offices or something, or move the parking or highlight that back there. That's not always busy, even when you have events. I don't know. I'm sure that you'll do something with it, but I do worry about the people who depend on that. But anyhow, just raising that up. Thank you for your consideration on that.
Mhm.
I worry about your two. Yeah. Thank you.
I just have one comment. I'd like to invite you all, if you are not aware of the Croswell's Great Big Night, it's our only annual fundraising event on Thursday, May 25th. Everyone is welcome. It is a ticketed event behind the Croswell and City parking lot in the farm parking lot, soon to be known as the Croswell. Part two. So please join us. It truly makes an impact on what the Croswell is able to accomplish each year. The results, the proceeds of that event fund all that we do in an annual, on an annual basis. So your support would be appreciated.
Do you have flyers? We could put one in our window.
Oh, yes, for sure. I can
Yeah.
bring some back. Yep.
And I apologize for showing up late. I had to be at another event this morning, another mayoral commitment, so can't do two at once. I wish I could split myself in half, but, and also apologize for not being at First Friday. I heard it was amazing. Unfortunately, I had a daughter graduating from the University of South Dakota at 9:30 Saturday morning, and I could not be here Friday and then be there by 9:30 in the morning, but it sounded like an amazing event, and the whole weekend had a lot of great events happening in our downtown area. And I think people are ready for spring and summer, and they are sick of this weather that we have and have been having. And I think they were very excited now for this great weather. So thank you for all that you do, supporting all of these great events and having your businesses open and accommodating.
Excellent. It reminds me, this is a side note, completely not with this board, but on May 20th, there's the grand opening of the connection to Tecumseh, the trail. It'll be held at Calzone Park. There's been numerous people invited. I want to make sure everybody's aware here. And the reason it may be in our purview is that it's downtown to downtown, right? And so we might, if anybody wants to show the support, it'll be that morning from 9 to 11. And there's a fun run, so all of you guys that like to run or walk even, they'll be putting that on. Tom Hawkins, from Supervisor of Raisin Township, has been our chair, and he's doing a great job, and it's a big event and gives us a chance to show some of the exposure of the Kiwanis Regional Trail Authority. So I'm going to go ahead and plug it. All right. Anything else come before this board? Commissioner Health, welcome. Glad you're here. Thank you. All right. Nothing further. We're adjourned.